Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my channel again. And here I continue my pursuit to look into interesting books and bring a sort of a summary and my experience of reading the book. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk about one book today which has been a great influence on me. And this is the book which really changed the way I've been looking at human interactions because I, being a human resources guy, the human resource interaction which happens in the organization or of organization is something which naturally interests me a lot. So this is a book which I picked up almost 8-9 years back, and trust me, ladies and gentlemen, I would have referred this book n number of times during these 8-9 years which I have been keeping this book with me. And the book which I'm going to talk about today is a book written by a person called William Isaacs, and the book is on a subject which is one of my favorite subject, and the entire credit of me getting interested in into this subject goes to William, and especially the book which is being written by William. And the book is about dialogue, and that's how the book is. And this is a book which is talk about dialogue and the art of thinking together. Okay, and the book is phenomenal with reference to the gains from an individual point of view, as well as a great book if you really want to create dialogue in your organization. Okay, and at personal level, your relationship level, your learning level, the transfer of knowledge which happens in our day-to-day life, the way we gain and the way we offer, I think it touches upon almost every aspect of a very critical and a very fundamental element and a process, which is the process of a dialogue. Okay, and ladies and gentlemen, we generally understand dialogue in a very limited way. We treat or we understand dialogue as something which is opposite of monologue, while it is not. So we look at the word dialogue. It consists of two parts. One is a dia and logos or logos. So the dia is means through, and logos means the word, or if we define it in a slightly wider way, it means the flow of meaning through words is what is called as a dialogue. Okay, so the dialogue is about experiencing the meaning. The dialogue is about getting into an inquiry. The dialogue is about exploring the power of collective intelligence. The dialogue is about improving relationship. The dialogue is about forming strategy in the organization. The dialogue is also at a center stage when it comes to the relationship between the union and the management. William talks about some of his experiences with some of the well-known organizations where he experimented with dialogue and the type of results which he experienced post these dialogue related interventions. I think those findings are very well captured in this book. Okay, so the first two three chapters talk about the concept of dialogue, the philosophy of dialogue, the history of dialogue, the anatomy of the dialogue, and then from the basics and the concept building, the book moves to the part 2, which is about the new behaviors which we need to develop. And those new behaviors also need to be developed because there are strong principles behind those behaviors. Okay, so the book talks about, for example, the principle of participation, and the book says that, look, for honoring the principle of participation, what we need to do is that we need to listen. Okay, so the book says that the true participation is about listening. Okay, the book talks about coherence principle. Okay, and the behavior which connects with the coherence principle is a behavior of respecting. Okay, that how do we respect the people in the organization, how do we respect the other stakeholders who are there in the organization, how do we respect the channel, the vendors, and all people who are part and parcel of the organization. And then he talks about third principle, which is a principle of awareness. And he says that we become aware because we suspend our assumptions, okay? And when we suspend our assumptions, then only we listen to know. Otherwise, we only speak to express what we already know. So the third principle is about the principle of awareness. And then there is a fourth principle, which is the principle of unfoldment. And that is where he talks about voicing. And these behaviors I have touched upon in some of my earlier videos. And the book moves forward and then takes the organizational perspective, and then it says that look how important things in organization can go completely in a different direction if the fundamentals of the dialogues are not being honored in the organization, okay? And he says that all great things which are going to happen in the organization would happen if there are great dialogues in the organization, okay? And I can vouch for that, that any process which is there in the organization, okay? So I'm not only talk about the process which are people related process, but I think every process which is there in the organization has a people element attached to it, okay? Because end of the day, the people are the developers of the process. People are those who operate the process and ensure that the processes are being effectively operated, okay? So the process or anything which happens in the organization, I think it's hinging around effective dialogues in the organization, okay? So there is a chapter in the book which also talks about the anatomy of the thought, okay, where it says that look, if we look at a thought process, we'll find that look, we get into what is called as an abstraction. Our thoughts are fragmented. There is a coherence which is missing, and then our thoughts also get into what is called as influence of the memory, okay? Or the book says that look, another word for not thinking is memory, okay? And then it also talks about the stuff which is with reference to respecting, okay? So uh, the thought, the anatomy of the thought, the different elements which are there in the anatomy of the thought, and then how do we overcome those things by developing a new behavior, and how do we execute that in our day-to-day life, and how do we execute that in the organization. That's what the book is all about. And I think anybody who's interested in human relations, especially the HR people, and especially the leadership team which is there in the organization, ladies and gentlemen, every page of the book which I have read, I see a sense and merit in it. And as the time is changing and the difficulty of conversation is building up with the advent of technology, or with the advent of uh, the world of emails and texting, the book becomes far more relevant, okay? And I really admire and appreciate the foresight of William Isaac, that he wrote this book almost 10 years, 11 years back, and the relevance of the book is completely intact, okay? On the contrary, I am sure that when he wrote this book, the crisis of dialogue was not as deep as the crisis of dialogue today is. And ladies and gentlemen, all successful organizations, all successful families, you'll see that they have a very distinct and a very effective way of dialogue taking place there, okay? So William also talks about something called the true, good, and beautiful principle, okay? He says that a good dialogue is supposed to be like a true, where there are objective stuff which is there, and it has to be good, which is like there are right norms and the right principles are taken care of. And the third element is the element of beautiful, which is the aesthetics part of it, okay? So a good dialogue is supposed to have these three elements, which is true, good, and beautiful, okay? And interestingly, there is another classification which uh, the book talks about, which is about the type of people who are there in the organization, and the way they get into dialogue also is very different, okay? And how their actions and their behaviors can be misunderstood, that also is very well covered in the book. And it says that, look, there are people who are movers in the organization, and there are people who are opposers in the organization, and there are people who are the followers in the organization. And the fourth category, he says, which is very important category, which is generally overlooked in the organization, is the group of people who are bystanders. Okay, so somebody who's a mover is generally an initiator. Okay, he says, fine, let's do this. Okay, there is someone who's an opposer there who says, no, this cannot be done, and then he brings forth his way of looking at the situation and looking at the perspective. Okay, and then there are people who are followers. Okay, they are good at following. Okay, so all movers would be of no use if there are no followers in the organization. Okay, and all movers could go berserk if there are no opposers in the organization. Okay, and similarly, there is a lot which is observing everything, which is experiencing things from a very different and a very diverse point of view, and these people are the bystanders in the organization. Okay, and they are bystander because they are standing outside on the border, observing everything, evaluating everything, and they have a great insight with them. So we got to take care of people who are the bystanders in the organization. So it's difficult to do justice with a beautiful book, a so well written book, and a so relevant a book in a short period of time. But I very strongly suggest that if you can get hold of the book and spend some time with the book, I guarantee it to you, and especially the human resources professionals. Okay, this book is going to change the way you look at whole human interaction which happens at home, in the society, and in the organization, or to that extent the dialogue at a national level. Okay, so a super book and a must read. So check it up, and share your experience of reading the book. Do write it to me, and I'll be happy to share any insight which I can share with you. Till that time, have a great day forward, and bye bye, and Jai Ho.